A NASCAR champion just told the world that if you strip away one piece of technology, half the Cup Series field disappears. Not get slower, disappears. Ty Gibbs, fresh off a win, fresh off locking himself into title contention, sat down and dropped a line that should make every team in the garage nervous. He didn't do it in anger, he did it laughing. And that's what makes it worse. Here's what actually happened. Ty Gibbs won at Iowa Speedway. The number 54 team is rolling into the playoffs, looking like a legitimate championship threat. In the middle of that momentum, Gibbs sat down with Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the Dale Jr. down mode and went off script. He said NASCAR's digital mirror system has gotten so advanced that it's propping up drivers who otherwise couldn't compete at this level. He compared the physical mirror in a cup car to the mirror on a city transit bus. He said the digital camera system is doing so much of the work that it's masking real skill gaps in the field, and Dale Jr. agreed with him. To understand why this comment lands so hard, you have to understand what digital mirrors actually do in a modern cup car. These aren't simple rear view mirrors. They're high-definition camera feeds, essentially giving drivers a tactical readout of exactly where every competitor is positioned around them in real time, with a level of clarity that old-school glass mirrors never came close to. Dale Earnhardt Jr. raced in an era where spotters and raw instinct did the heavy lifting. Gibbs is racing in an era where a screen does part of that job for him. That generational gap is exactly why this comment carries weight. This isn't some outsider complaining about NASCAR technology. This is one of the sport's rising stars, someone who benefits from this system every single week, essentially admitting the sport may be leaning too hard on it. And there's a deeper layer here. Gibbs isn't just talking about convenience, he's talking about competitive integrity. He's suggesting that some drivers currently competing at NASCAR's highest level might not belong there if you took away the tool that's compensating for a skill deficiency. That's not a small claim. That's a shot across the bow of the entire driver pool. Let's break down what's really going on here, because this is bigger than a podcast soundbite. The strategic angle. Digital mirrors don't just help drivers avoid contact. They give drivers information advantage in traffic. Who's inside, who's outside, who's closing fast, who's vulnerable to a bump and run. Gibbs pointed out directly that drivers can essentially study a screen and time an aggressive move on someone's line with far more precision than mirror and instinct racing ever allowed. That changes the nature of side-by-side racing. It shifts some of the skill requirement from raw car control and awareness toward reading a digital feed accurately under pressure. Different skill, still a skill, but different. The risk Gibbs is describing. If Gibbs is right and NASCAR ever did strip the digital system out, you'd likely see an immediate talent gap exposed. Drivers who lean heavily on the tech for spatial awareness would struggle. Drivers with elite natural instincts, the kind Dale Jr. built his career on, would separate from the field fast. That's a fascinating hypothetical because it suggests the current competitive order in Cup Series might be somewhat inflated by technology, not purely by driver ability. Is this smart or dangerous for Gibbs to say? It's smart, and here's why. Gibbs isn't attacking a specific rival. He's making a broader philosophical point about the sport's direction, and he's doing it from a position of strength, coming off a win, sitting in a championship position. That timing protects him. Nobody can accuse him of sour grapes, but there's a wrinkle. Gibbs also admitted the mirror saved his race one time when his radio failed and he had to spot for himself using the camera. That's an important detail because it shows Gibbs isn't being a hypocrite. He's not saying the tech is useless. He's saying it might be too good, to the point where it's changing who succeeds and who doesn't at the cup level. That's a much more credible argument than a driver just complaining about a rule. What could happen next? Don't expect NASCAR to rip digital mirrors out of the car overnight. Safety regulators aren't going to remove a system that's been proven to reduce blind spot incidents just because a driver thinks it makes racing too easy. But comments like this do build pressure. If more veteran or contending drivers start echoing Gibbs publicly, NASCAR could eventually explore restrictions, limiting camera resolution, limiting field of view, or reworking mirror rules specifically for road courses where Gibbs suggested the tech creates the biggest advantage. This is the kind of story that starts as a laugh on a podcast and ends as a real rules conversation. 18 months later, expect a split reaction and a loud one. Old school fans and traditionalists are going to eat this up. For years, purists have argued that modern NASCAR technology has softened the raw skill ceiling of the sport. Gibbs just handed them a quote straight from a title contender's mouth. On the other side, current drivers and teams who built their entire race strategy around digital mirror usage are not going to love this take. Nobody wants to hear, even jokingly, that their spot in the Cup Series might be tech-assisted rather than pure talent. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. co-signing the idea adds serious credibility. When a Hall of Fame level name backs up a young driver's controversial claim, it stops being a joke and starts being a real talking point across the NASCAR media cycle. Best case scenario, this comment sparks a legitimate conversation inside the garage about balancing technology and raw driving skill. NASCAR quietly studies mirror regulations for future seasons, and Gibbs gets credit as the driver who is honest enough to say what a lot of insiders were already thinking. Worst case scenario, the comment gets clipped, spun out of context, and turned into a talking point used against Gibbs by rival drivers heading into the playoffs, turning a lighthearted podcast joke into a distraction during the most important stretch of a season. Either way, this quote isn't disappearing quietly. So here's the real question. If NASCAR stripped digital mirrors out of every Cup car tomorrow, do you believe half the field would struggle to keep up? Or is Ty Gibbs exaggerating to make a point? Drop your take in the comments. Are digital mirrors making Cup Series racing smarter, or are they making it too easy? If you want more breakdowns like this, hit subscribe because we're covering every angle of this story as it develops.